Hello, and welcome to the Fun with Friends podcast, Wandering Creatives Edition. I'm your host, Allie Coots, and today I'm joined by Sarah Magida of Firefly Life Coaching. Sarah is a life coach for artists and focuses on empowering artists to live their best, most fulfilling, and fearless lives in comfort and ease. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's good to be here virtually and chat with you. Yes.
Yes, I've been looking forward to our conversation for quite a while, and I'm super pumped to have you on and to really jump into what you do and how you work with artists and how you kind of help them maybe overcome some of those barriers that they experience so that they can build their creative art businesses. So thank you again for being on.
Yes, I am happy to be here, and I'm happy to discuss these things that are so relevant to our lives as creative human beings and as people that want to be doing that full time or most of the time.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So let's jump right into it. Can you tell me a little bit about Firefly Life Coaching and kind of what you do?
Sure. Well, I got just the name. It came from, I live in the city, but I live right next to a green space that has lots of fireflies or lightning bugs in the summer. And it's just so magical and beautiful to be able to step outside and see those little bits of light, all over the place. And so I really wanted to kind of capture that magic in just the name of a company, because even just naming a company can be a magical, wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. And artists are magical, wonderful people. So let's put all that together and call it Firefly Life Coaching. And I knew I wanted to be working with some very creative thinkers, art people, also that, how do I put this? Society deems weird.
Other than, yeah.
Maybe have tricky ways or don't quite understand marketing, or like, why would anyone want to hear about how different my life is? And I'm like, they want to know.
Yes, we want to hear all of it.
That's the best part of being an artist is, you get to live this wild life that a lot of people are envious of.
Yeah, I love that. And how long have you been doing Firefly Life Coaching?
About 3 years. I've been focusing more on artists, more on just running my business, making it feasible, making it real. Yeah.
It's super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And a large part of what you do is you focus on kind of like the internal beliefs that limit artists and like kind of how we limit ourselves. What are some of the more common kind of limitations that you see artists putting on themselves?
Ooh, there's so many places. A lot of it has to do with, my mind is like jumping from person to person and just thinking about so many variations that I run into of sort of this. And that would have a lot to do with, it's a lot of, is what I make art? How can what I make exist out in the world? And also combine that with some imposter syndrome, expectations from other people, and expectations of, I need to be in MoMA. I need to be at the Hirshhorn. I need to be, immediately there's, and I'm like, you build it up.
Yeah.
Build it up. And you live your wonderful life along the way, and you invite people into that life in many ways, and you'll get there. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, you got to start and work your way up.
Yes. And a lot of, the stories out there are like Basquiat, and he went from, selling t-shirts on the street to New York blue chip galleries pretty fast, but he also didn't do so well when it came to his own life and being a healthier human being. And so like those are the stories that a lot of people hear or see, or, his work sells for this much and that much. And, those kind of stories you hear about often, but you don't hear about like the nitty gritty part of these things. That is really a part of everybody's life as a creative.
Yeah, what goes on behind the scenes, behind the art.
Behind the art is huge. Yes.
Yeah, I know, and that's something we've talked about before on the podcast is imposter syndrome and how that can kind of really make you start questioning everything. Like I know, like I can speak just, for myself, what I've experienced, especially putting art out there, was trying to figure out, because you're always kind of told, right? Like what problem are you solving for other people?
Mm-hmm.
And I kept trying to apply that to my own art. Like, okay, well, I've created this piece, but what is it doing for someone else? Like, am I just creating it for myself, or is it actually something that will make a difference in someone's life some way? And so that also plays into kind of just like the mind game of selling art and kind of putting yourself out there and like oh my gosh, it's just so hard.
Well, I think to kind of backtrack into like, where am I making a product that people will want? Really more people, I think, that buy art really want to know the story behind what you're doing. And so much of the story is what connects people to your art.
Yes.
And, people get really intrigued with the lives and thoughts of artists. And it's a much different way to go about selling things rather than like marketing or design or, all this problem solving language or, a new vacuum cleaner. What do people want that they don't know they need type of idea. Really, it's much more internal when you're selling art. You're really talking and creating relationships with people that are about you. And so being willing to have those conversations where you're really inviting people into your world are absolutely essential in both getting your work out there and in communicating with people about what your work does.
Yeah, and terrifying.
For them. Yeah, it's not just for them. It's their connection to your story.
Oh, I love that.
Your beliefs surrounding your own artwork. And, and then it's not so much like they didn't know they needed this. And so I designed a new vacuum cleaner with this crazy feature that now, technology is up to speed with this. It's more like they didn't even know this could be interpreted in this way.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Cause it's like I don't want to say I have a marketing background, but I do like social media marketing stuff. And so I do always tell people like it's the story behind whatever you're doing. That's what is going to connect you to folks. But when it comes to selling my own stuff, I always fall back on that. Like, what problem am I solving? Like what is, but I like the way that you put it, that it is really about not necessarily do I need this piece of art, but do I connect with this piece of art, or do I connect with what you're putting out there? And I love that, because again, it like goes back to the storytelling side of kind of what you're doing and connecting with people. So yeah, I love that so much.
Thank you. Yeah. I think more artists need to hear that. Like people or collectors or patrons or your friends, well, maybe not your friends so much actually, but the strangers that are just finding you, be it through social media or in-person events or, however you're getting your artwork out there. However you're getting people to look at what you're doing is so bound to communication as well. And, I work with a lot of people that are very focused on the galleries as validation. Not only they'll sell my work and this is the only avenue to take, but like getting into this space means that I've accomplished this. And so much of that is just outside validation or, like clout, that kind of. But so much of art making is finding your own voice in the sales market. And, I know people that have set up farm stands outside their rural home, and that's how they sell art. It varies tremendously. The greatest thing is to get it in front of people.
Yeah.
It's the biggest hurdle, not like, is it standard enough for this space? Like,
yeah, it's a gallery worthy.
Yeah, worthy. That's a huge part of things. Worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would be a good way for, I'm pulling out questions randomly for you. So like an example, because I find, or I've done like a lot of markets, right? And you see a lot of people selling their art there. And some people really draw a crowd with their artwork. And, others of us, we got to push a little harder. But what's a way for artists to share their story in a maybe like more digestible way? Or I guess, like how can they connect with folks maybe a little quicker?
Okay.
Especially like in like a market setting. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I do markets too. So I've become this observer of the markets as well as, an active participant. And a huge turnoff just right off the bat is when people sit there and look at their phones.
Oh, yeah. They're just not engaged.
They're not engaged. It doesn't look like they're even excited to be there. They're not really talking to people that are looking at their work. They're kind of checked out. So I would say first and foremost, this is your work. You need to be excited to be there at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're showing up for your work and for yourself. So, this isn't a chore. You're not watching somebody else's table. You're here for you. You're here to start engaging with people, even if you're an introvert. There are so many different ways to get creative around engagement, and then it comes also to your presentation of your work. I encourage people to look at Pinterest and things like that, but really just get weird with it. Get wild with it. Put up some flags, like run, like the 7th or whatever 70th person to sign up for your email list, which I always also encourage people to have email list there. We're going to ring this bell and you get to have a sticker, because I know stickers are huge these days. But, like make a show of it and have a really good time. We used to have this small print fair, or multiples fair, I think it was called, in Baltimore. And somebody was just Xeroxing spaghetti for people for like $10 quote unquote prints of spaghetti in this old school copying machine. And that, do it. You be that person. And if you're really not that person, that's okay too, because you're going to attract a completely different audience than the spaghetti on the printer machine. And, so I really, and some people just naturally draw attention to themselves, and that's fine. And I think like I do some exercises before doing a market or starting a market, kind of ritualizing it so that I get into the frame of mind of being there and, leave whatever happened that morning or afternoon kind of like in this other place. And like, now I'm here to do my work and talk to people about my work.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You could do, there's so many options for communicating your story. Maybe when you're not too fond of communicating with people.
Yeah. I love, I couldn't agree more about like the newsletter thing. I'm like, yes, everyone should have a newsletter. I'm very passionate about that. But I like the idea of what you said, like making it kind of like ritualistic, like to break out of the mindset. Cause I know like can be introverted, but I get like exhausted from people. Like, I get real tired. So I have to like be able to turn it on, and then after a while, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can go anymore. But what I started doing was I had a playlist that I would play every time I was going to a market to get me like hyped up. And that would get me like pumped to get out and like talk to people and be like more social and stuff. So I think that like you said, having some type of like ritual thing that gets you into market mode, or even like if you have a storefront or something like that, just to like get you get you going and getting ready to like talk to people is super, super smart.
Yeah. Yeah. They help in so many different ways. Basically, that's what affirmations are. It's almost like manipulating yourself to get into the frame of mind that you need to accomplish the things that you want to be doing. And then it becomes easier and easier to get to the places where you're self-promotion or what have you. Yeah.
I love that. And is that stuff that when like an artist comes to you and they're, feeling a little like unsure of themselves or unsure of what they're doing, like, should I be selling my art? Should I not? Like, what are my next steps? Is that kind of how you assist them? Like you can help with like coming up with like daily affirmations and like plans and like getting them hyped.
Yes, that is, so I do a couple things, like I have one-on-one clients, and that sort of more is focused on the person that may already have their vision together, or may already have their goals set together. And maybe they either want to go deeper and attain their goals faster, or they want that like kind of like shedding transformative work to get more artistic breakthroughs, to get to a place where they're doing the work that they really like at their soul core place. They know they want to be doing, but for whatever reason, it's like out of touch. And they're like, something's got to shift, something's got to grow, but they don't really know what it is. There's some fogginess there. So that's more like one-on-ones. And then I do a program that's 3 months long. That's more of a group program. And that's more focused on the wellness, the ritual, the affirmations, the vision work, the growth mindset. And then, getting into a place where you're attaining that vision. So alignment, intention, integrity. And then added to that group coaching program is like one-on-one coaching. And then added to that whole group coaching with one-on-one coaching, it ends with like a couple more months of business coaching.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's when, you have sort of this framework of wellness you're settling into. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to actually apply this now under this umbrella of Firefly Love Coaching, staying within this community group, this network. And I'm going to really get that business side down, that career focus. Yeah.
I love that. Because I think that's something that has come up before on the podcast, is that like the business side of stuff can be so foreign to like a lot of people. Like it's so complicated. And I love that you combine like the emotional, mental side of it with the business too. And you just bundle it all together. It's amazing.
Yeah. Because I think, and it's like, there are first steps to this. There's kind of like sweeping up what's in the corners, what you're not quite seeing as issues that might actually be getting in the way, clearing house, but the house is you. And then, then like moving forward with this like new place you're in, and really diving into what it is you want to have work out for yourself.
Oh, that was I'm like, that's such a wonderful metaphor. Like you're cleaning house and the house is you. I was like, yes.
Yeah, so that's what I do. And it's like, I'm like, fuck yeah, this is my job.
Right. I bet it's like so inspirational too, to be able to like see people start, maybe like unsure and like, not sure where they're going, and then just watch them grow as they go through the program. Like, that's gotta be so just.
It's really good. And I've been tweaking this program for the last 3 years, like really making it not just meeting people where they're at financially, but also just, merely I want this to be like really effective for people and like the best investment they can make in their artistic lives. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, like I could write a mission statement right now. And then of course I make art myself. So a lot of this type of work as a person, as a creative, as even like the more spiritual, meditative, aspects to my own being They're very much affirmed through working as a coach because it works for people too.
Yeah. Oh.
And they grow and they get things out of it. So, for me, it's very life affirming, both as a coach and as an artist. And I've definitely grown in my artistic practice as well with all this coaching, not just coaching others, but receiving coaching. And it's important.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's just like fuel to the fire for you a little bit, like, and just being amongst other creative people and just, yeah, it gives me goosebumps talking about it. I'm like, that's amazing. I would actually love to hear a little bit about your artwork and what you do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I do a lot of fibers. I've kind of been debating about my dye garden. Like, is this a hobby or is this a practice? And it's sort of both. Because I grow a dye garden in my front yard and I grow indigo and I grow a lot of flowers for flower stamping and things like that, bridge from hobby to practice. And I decided that was okay to do. Sometimes I need to affirm myself.
There you go.
Yeah. And I do some like painting with natural dye, and I do like quilting, and sometimes I'm ordering dye from different companies, and then sometimes I'm growing it in my front yard, and I do some tufting work too. I started that over the pandemic, rug tufting.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It's very fun. And for whatever reason, it got very trendy or noticeable over the pandemic. And I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
It's very fun. I do a lot of hand embroidery too.
Oh.
So tufting is so much faster that there's a sweet spot. There's a good overlap for that in terms of my practice. Yeah.
Fun. Do you weave as well?
I don't weave and I don't knit.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
I don't like counting.
I feel you on that. It is one of the downsides to knitting for sure, which is why all of my work is I just do scarves because I don't have to count as much.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because like that sort of the counting just like takes me out of the process.
Yeah, you have to focus.
Yeah, I like zoning out. I like just the meditative. Yeah. I like just like being in my own space, turning on a podcast,
There you go.
Watching Deary Girls. Great show.
Great show. New season just came out, I think, right?
Yeah, new season watched.
Oh, I've not watched it yet, but I love that show. It's so good. Also love that you have your own dye garden. That's super cool.
Thank you. It's something that I kind of, for a long time, I just thought that it was like archaic knowledge that was gone from this world and it didn't happen anymore. And then I heard about like this is like a while ago, because now it's pretty trendy working with indigo now or natural dye. And somehow it like all coincided in my front yard. And there's also a community dye garden in Baltimore City.
Oh, that's really,
Yeah. So that kind of started around the same time I was learning how to get seeds and plants and, what grew best and all that kind of work and the research behind it. And then out just popped this community dye garden. That was kind of a project through the Maryland Institute College of Art, and I think a couple other colleges locally. And now it still exists. Yeah. It's
I've heard of like regular community gardens, but never like a community dye garden before.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
That's awesome. So we talked a little bit about like how affirmations or like forming some type of ritual around your work and what you're doing is one way to kind of like feel a little more confident in what you're doing and putting yourself out there. What are a couple of other ways that artists can kind of feel more comfortable and confident in their art practice?
Ooh, this goes in. It's so individual. The things that are really affecting someone in their just in the communication, in the dialogue, in the acceptance that they're doing a good job and their art is wonderful and that people do want to see it and do want to learn about them. And that comes more, I guess, more in the coaching, more in the conversation, the creative conversation, that sort of dissecting out the stories from the facts. And how much of this is something you're telling yourself, and how much of this is a very factual based reality, and how much of this is a pattern in that story. Like, you're like, okay, I go to this market every weekend and I'm just not seeing the results I want to see. Well, what results are you seeing? What are you doing? What are you not doing here? You know, and I do sometimes give suggestions. Not every coach is into that, but we will like hash out more of a plan and more of, you know, a method to actually get to the places where they want to be. And, you know, so much of it is that act of doing rather than the how will I get there. You kind of make the shift to like, what do I need to get to this place? What needs to change to get to this place? Not how. Because how, it's do you feel that even when I say that? Like, it's like a little shift of, you know, the how is it kind of brings you down. Just a little. And it's, you know, it's like putting something in front of you instead of moving something aside.
Yeah, it's like hypothetical rather than actually doing.
And then what do I need to get there? What needs to change? What needs to shift? What do I need to show up as today? You know, then that's like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm inviting it. I'm showing up as, you know, the person that did the ritual to get to the market, to get in the place where I'm, you know, doing the sales. And that's okay. That's fine. You know, we live in a capitalist society. Please don't give your art away for free. It's very important. You know, and a lot of people I do work with are very worried about receiving money for their art.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes a daunting place to be. And somehow, you know, the immediate path is straight to being a jerk about having money. It goes from no money to straight to being a jerk because you have money. Or, you know, like that's a really fast track right there.
Yeah.
So, you know, it almost parallels the like, I'm not showing anywhere or selling anything. I need to be at MoMA.
Yeah.
You know,
you're at two ends of the
it's a big jump. And it's not acknowledging a journey along the way. And so when I say vision work really acknowledges a journey along the way. And, you know, it's not just the end result. It's also the like, who do I get to be while I'm getting there? You know, when I have excess income, do I buy a friend's artwork or do I give it to a nonprofit or charity or whatever I want to be doing? You know, and how important is that to me?
Yeah.
And that's
like that.
That's okay.
I love or the way you described the how and the what is like almost mind-blowing to me because it makes so much sense, because it is like the how is, because I know a lot of folks like get really bogged down in like the research.
Yes.
And these are the what I should be doing, and this is what other people are doing, and I feel like that's a lot of the how.
Yes.
And
then, a lot of books have been written about how.
Yeah, and then you don't, but then it's moving it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of marketing books that I've read, they kind of just tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Slightly different way. And, a lot of things I even see on the internet are like, how to sell your artwork in 5 days, blah.
Yeah.
There's no proven method for success in these areas. There are some things that I described as like the hardcore facts, like, taking really good images of your artwork that are clear and in focus.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a hardcore fact. We all do it differently when it comes to speaking about our values, speaking about our work process. That's the interesting side. Don't discredit your really interesting path that you've been on. Like, that's really important, and it adds to what you're putting out into the world. Like, I know I did graphic design for a while, and some people do get very focused on like the brand story. And some people dismiss it, but it's also just really a potent thing. And so many people, I think, especially these days, I don't know for sure, I haven't done the research on this, but they want to know more about you. And, are companies sustainable? Are they women owned? Are they minority owned? Or, BIPOC owned? Or, they want to know about the journey to get where you are right now and where you want to go. And that's what collectors want to know about too, patrons. They want to know where you want to go. And they want to know if they're supporting that journey, which also becomes a different thing because they also want to know if like they can resell the art for a really high price. But that's a different thing. That's a completely different conversation to have. Yeah. But when it's you and you're speaking to people, no matter where you are, if you're at a market, if you're at an art farm stand, if you're just casually having a conversation with your neighbor who you didn't know loves to collect art, these are the places where sales are made. Or if you're at the MoMA and you're exhibiting whatever you want to be exhibiting there, this is where the dialogue continues to happen. Your bio, your statement, these are all important things.
Yeah, I'll tell them that story.
A lot about that. Yeah. Yeah, people worry about those kind of things a lot. Yeah. And it's more done is better than perfect, and anything that's done is great.
I love that mindset. Done is better than perfect. Yes. Because it's so easy to get caught up on trying to be perfect and put out like the perfect piece of writing or your bio or whatever. But if you just keep working on it, it's never going to actually exist. So
yeah, I used to write like a new artist statement almost once a month.
Oh, wow.
Not a completely new one, but adding and subtracting, keeping all the old statements, and just, it's important to have that written dialogue with yourself, and you know what to pull from them when you are talking to other human being. Yeah.
Yeah, I did an exercise once where I was working on like a piece of writing for like a PR campaign. And it was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever had to write was my own like story of where I started and why I started my business and like how I got to where I was and everything. And it was a challenge, but it also made me aware of a lot of things that, like you kind of mentioned earlier, like are things that I wouldn't necessarily think anyone would be interested in.
Yeah.
That were actually the more interesting parts that people wanted to hear more about. So I think that is maybe like a good exercise for folks to try is like, just put it into words.
Yeah. And like what sounds sort of mundane to you, like if you grew up in a family of 3 or like you're the youngest of 10, those are all important things that are aspects of your work. Still, it's still important. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you have shared so much good, like so many amazing, like little nuggets of knowledge as we've been talking. As we kind of like start to wrap up a little bit, like I said, you've already shared like a ton of advice and tips for folks, but do you have any final words of advice or encouragement for folks that are looking to start an art business or just get their art out there more?
Just keep going, keep doing it. Keep doing it. And like I tell myself, as long as I'm making art, I am doing great. So as long as I'm keeping that practice up, that's really what the hard work is, doing art when you may not be seeing all those results. I'd say that's when it's the most important, actually. And that may be your reprieve time from being in front of people, time to work on, whatever might be coming next, whatever you need to process. The downtime to like an art career or an art business is essential, actually. It's just like breathing. You breathe in and then you pause and then you breathe out. Breathe in, you pause. So it's okay to pause. That's all right. It's going to come back around. Just keep making your art.
Keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Please. Yes.
Great advice. You have a really wonderful way of like breaking things down and saying, just the way you articulate things is amazing. So last couple of questions for you. Is there anything that you're currently working on that you would like to share with folks, or do you have anything coming up?
Sure. Well, next up, I guess you could call it online challenge, online workshop is, I believe, the second week of January. I am still updating my website about it, and deciding on exact dates. It's called Art is Life, which if you do pay a lot of attention to the art world and art critic, especially Jerry Saltz, he happens to have a book that's coming out called Art is Life. I didn't plan it. We didn't plan that together, but it forever intertwines me with his book title, which I'm like, oh, if you have another idea for the name of that, but it is currently, it's called Art is Life, 5-day plus challenge for people, any artist at any point in their career, or anybody that just wants to work on their vision for their lives and get a nice dose of creativity along the way. It's there for you. Yes. And then
Wonderful.
Then I have a couple programs starting towards the end of January that I mentioned in the podcast too.
Oh, awesome. And if folks want to kind of like follow along and keep up to date, where can they find you online?
Yeah, I have social media galore, Instagram, firefly_life_coaching. And then I, of course, have a website, www.firefly-lifecoaching.com.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and you can be in touch with any of those platforms. Absolutely.
And I will include Sarah's information in the podcast description and show notes so you can easily access them to find her on or find them online. And I mean, I can't thank you enough for being on, Sarah. This was wonderful. And I would love to maybe have you back on in the future sometime to really dig into some art business talk.
I think I might start a podcast too.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So maybe you can come on my podcast.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That would be amazing. You definitely should. I think everyone should have a podcast. Oh yeah, definitely keep us up to date, and we'll share when you get your podcast up and going.
Great. That would be fun. Okay.
Oh, that would be amazing. And with that, I want to thank Sarah again for being on the episode. It was just absolutely amazing having you on. And I'd also like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in to today's episode. If you have questions or comments for me or any of my guests, including Sarah, you can text or call us on our hotline, 252-419-6004, and we will answer your questions on a future episode of the podcast. Also, be sure to like, rate, and review wherever you listen. And you can follow us on Instagram at Fun with Friends Podcast and at Wandering Creatives Pod. And until next time, stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Fun with Friends podcast, a CEI media production. Please like, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast as it helps us greatly. You can follow us on Instagram at Fun with Friends Podcast and on Facebook. If you would like to support the podcast, you can become a Patreon for just $5 a month. The link is in the episode description. Now get out there, try something new, and have some fun. Bye.